I stopped trying to keep up, and that's when life got better. Asterisk, it started slowly, not with a crash or a dramatic meltdown, but with little sighs I didn't even notice I was making. A quiet weariness had crept into my life. Days felt heavy, even when nothing had gone particularly wrong. I was doing all the things I was supposed to be doing, showing up, working hard, staying connected, setting goals, being productive. On paper, my life looked fine, maybe even admirable. But inside, I was tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes. It was a soul-deep exhaustion, like I'd been running a race I never signed up for. Everywhere I turned, there was something. Or someone reminding me of where I should be. Friends landing promotions. Families taking picture-perfect vacations. Strangers online building dream lives before breakfast. And no matter how much I achieved, there was always something. Just out of reach. A better version of me I hadn't become yet. A quieter voice always whispering, "Keep going. You're not quite there yet." I didn't realize how much I had built my life around keeping up. It wasn't just about competing with others. It was about keeping pace with this invisible version of myself I thought I needed to become. Smarter, fitter, kinder, more organized, more successful, more ... everything. And even when I hit certain milestones, I never felt like I could stop and breathe. There was always a next thing to chase. I used to believe that staying in the race meant I was strong. That pushing through meant I had discipline. That being busy meant I had purpose. But the truth is, I was afraid. Afraid of falling behind. Afraid of being forgotten. Afraid of being average. I wore those fears like armor, hoping no one would see how deeply lost I felt under the weight of it all. And then, something shifted. Not all at once, but enough to make me pause. Enough to make me ask, who am I trying to impress? Enough to wonder, is this what I want, or just what I've been told to want? That pause, that quiet crack in the routine, was the beginning of everything changing. Because when I stopped trying to keep up, something unexpected happened. Life got better. Not flashier. Not more successful in the way the world defines it. But better, deeper, quieter, and somehow more mine. If you're tired too, tired of running, tired of performing, tired of always needing to be more, I want to talk to you. This isn't about giving up. It's about coming back to yourself. It's about letting go of the pressure to keep up and finally starting to live. It's funny how we're told the path to happiness is paved with effort, ambition, and drive. And it is, to some extent. But no one talks about the toll it takes when that drive becomes a treadmill you can't get off. When you're not chasing dreams anymore, but chasing other people's dreams. When the finish line keeps moving, and you start to forget why you're even running. I remember a season of my life where everything looked productive. My calendar was full. My inbox was constantly buzzing. My days were stacked with things too. Doing people to please. And I kept telling myself, this is just what success looks like. Keep pushing. But I wasn't okay. I was emotionally flatlining, smiling through burnout, nodding in conversations while my mind was miles away, calculating the next thing I had to do. Comparison was everywhere. It wasn't always loud, but it was constant. A friend's house that was a little more stylish. A colleague who seemed to thrive with less effort. A stranger online who had better skin, better kids, better lighting. And every time I saw those things, I quietly added them to my mental checklist. Do more, be more, try harder. I didn't envy them out loud. I just kept folding myself smaller inside, as if I'd only matter when I caught up. And it wasn't just about material things. The emotional cost was greater. I started avoiding stillness because it made me uncomfortable. I didn't know how to be alone with my own thoughts without them spiraling into self-critique. Even joy became performative, shared more to prove something than to actually feel it. Life began to feel like a to-do list that could never be completed. My relationships suffered too, but not in ways that were obvious. I was present, but distracted. I was helpful, but often resentful. I loved people, but I rarely felt connected, because deep down, I wasn't connected to myself. And if I'm not truly connected to me, how could I ever fully show up for anyone else? That's the hidden cost. It's not just stress or tiredness, those you can usually spot. It's the disconnection, the loss of joy, the silence inside. You growing louder, asking, is this really it? And most people don't notice until the race is taken, more than it ever gave. The hardest part is that this kind of race looks so normal, so responsible, so admirable. We reward busyness. We admire the hustle. We glamorize struggle as long as it leads to visible success. But behind the scenes, so many of us are running ourselves into the ground for validation we don't even believe in. And the scariest part? Most people don't stop until something breaks. For me, the breaking point didn't look dramatic. No screaming match, no grand resignation, no public collapse. It was quiet, almost invisible, but it was real. One day, I was sitting at my kitchen table, sipping coffee that had gone cold. Again, and something in me just sighed, I can't do this anymore. It wasn't the coffee. It wasn't a single event. It was everything. The years of overextending. The countless yeses that should have been no's. The pressure to keep performing, achieving, smiling. I realized I was exhausted from holding up. A version of myself that was never meant to carry all that weight. I had been so busy chasing after life that I hadn't really lived any of it. I kept saying, when things slow down, I'll rest. When I hit this goal, I'll be happy. When I get through this month, I'll finally take care of myself. But it never slowed down. The next thing always came, and I realized, it's not life that needs to change, it's me. But even in that moment of realization, I was scared. Scared of disappointing people. Scared of being seen as lazy or unmotivated or selfish. Scared of letting go of an identity I had built around productivity. Because if I wasn't keeping up, what was I? Who was I? The truth? I didn't know. And that was the most uncomfortable part, realizing I had spent so long becoming someone the world would admire that I no longer recognized the person I actually was. Still, something in me knew, this is not the life you were meant to live. Not because it was bad, but because it wasn't true. It wasn't rooted in peace or purpose. It was survival masked as ambition. And the longer I stayed in it, the more I risked losing the part of me that still believed in something gentler, slower, freer. So I began to stop. Not all at once. That's not how healing works. But little by little, I started to let go. I canceled things that didn't feel essential. I paused projects that drained me. I said no to invitations without a long explanation. I sat still, even when I felt restless. I let the silence come. And in that silence, I started to hear a voice I hadn't heard in a long time. My own. It didn't happen overnight. I still had moments where I doubted myself, where the fear of falling behind crept in. But each time I honored my limits, each time I chose rest over rush, something softened in me. I started to feel alive again, not productive, not impressive, but alive, and that's when everything started to shift. Once I stepped away from the race, I expected the world to collapse. I had built this belief that if I slowed down, if I stopped striving, everything would fall apart. That people would forget me, that opportunities would vanish, that I'd somehow become invisible, but that didn't happen. What happened was far more surprising. The world kept going. And I was finally able to catch my breath. In the beginning, it felt uncomfortable. Slowness, stillness, they were foreign to me. I didn't know what to do without the rush. I'd sit with a cup of tea and feel guilty for not using my time better. I'd look at my planner and feel like I should be filling it with more. The noise in my head didn't disappear overnight, but something deeper than guilt started to grow. Presence. I began noticing things again. The light through the trees in the morning. The way my body felt when it wasn't tense. The simple joy of doing one thing at a time. There was no fanfare to this rebuilding. No big breakthroughs. Just small moments stitched together by intention and care. I restructured my days. Not to squeeze more in, but to leave space. I started saying no to things that no longer aligned with who I was becoming. I stopped performing for people who never really saw me. I let go of trying to explain myself to those who were never really listening. And in that space, I started to hear myself more clearly. Relationships began to shift too. Some faded, not with bitterness, but with grace. Others deepened, because I showed up more honestly. I wasn't rushing through conversations. I wasn't multitasking my way through time with people. I was learning to be with them, fully. And then there were the inner changes, subtle but profound. I stopped defining myself by how much I got done. I stopped chasing productivity as proof of worth. I started to feel my own enoughness in the quiet, in the pause, in the just being. The biggest shift? I stopped apologizing for resting, for needing space, for not answering immediately, for not posting everything, for not keeping up. I gave myself permission to live slower, to be less impressive, but more real. Rebuilding at your own pace isn't glamorous. It's not something people applaud, because they can't always see it, but you feel it, deep in your bones. The peace, the clarity, the steady returning to yourself. Letting go is not just an act of release, it's an invitation. And what it invites into your life is something you might never have experienced fully: freedom. I used to think that by letting go, I would lose everything: momentum, relevance, identity. But what I lost were the things I never needed: the pressure, the comparison, the fear. And what came in their place were gifts I never expected. First, there was time, real, unrushed time. I began to read again, not to learn, but to feel. I took walks without a step goal. I lingered over meals. I sat in silence and realized it wasn't empty, but full of possibility. When you stop rushing, life stops rushing past you. Then came clarity. With less noise, I could finally hear my own voice. Not the voice shaped by expectations, but the one I had buried under years of trying to fit in. That voice was quieter, but stronger. It didn't shout. It guided. And it led me back to things I had once loved: painting, journaling, long conversations that didn't check the clock. I also noticed my relationships becoming more tender, more truthful. I wasn't performing anymore. I wasn't trying to be the best, or the most interesting, or the most helpful. I was just being. And somehow that made space for deeper connection. When you're not trying to impress, you become easier to love and easier to love others, too. Perhaps the most beautiful gift was joy, not the kind you plan for, but the kind that surprises you. The belly laugh during a walk. The tears that come from a song you haven't heard in years. The way a breeze through the window makes you stop and smile. These moments don't come when you're sprinting. They come when you slow down long enough to feel them. Letting go also gave me something I didn't know I was missing: dignity. The dignity of choosing my own rhythm, of saying no when it wasn't right, of no longer needing to prove my value, of standing in my life as it is and calling it enough. There's no blueprint for this, no 10-step guide to getting your life back. But there is a path, and it begins with releasing the belief that you must keep up to be worthy. That's a lie, and once you see it for what it is, you'll never want to chase it again. Looking back now, I don't see my choice to stop chasing as a failure. I see it as a return. A homecoming to the parts of me that had been waiting, patiently, quietly, for me to stop long enough to listen. I didn't fall behind. I simply stepped off a path that was never mine to begin with. I know some people will still look at my life and think I could be doing more. They'll measure me by the same metrics I once used to measure myself: productivity, prestige, pace. But I don't live by those standards anymore. I don't need to, because I'm no longer trying to win a race. I'm trying to live a life. And here's the truth. A truth I had to live through to believe. You don't have to keep up to matter. You don't have to be busy to be valuable. You don't have to be visible to be enough. You can slow down. You can say no. You can choose a quieter life, and it can still be full, rich, meaningful. I thought I had to chase my worth. But my worth was never out there. It was always in here, in the stillness, in the softness, in the sacred space where nothing needs to be earned. So if you're tired, deeply tired, let this be your permission. You're allowed to stop. You're allowed to rest. You're allowed to change your mind, to change your pace, to change your life. Come home to yourself. That's where the real life is, and believe me, it's better here.